As this video begins, I want to run some mathematics by you real quick. Dragons are badass. Therefore, someone who can defeat a dragon in battle is double badass. And from there, someone who can not only defeat a dragon in battle, but then tame it and ride it as their own mount, is badass to an exponential degree, which starts becoming so badass, we're in the territory of Shadow the Hedgehog and Duke Nukem. Fire Emblem has long ago realized the badassery of a Dragon Rider, with the Dragon Rider class line being around since the series' inception, and appearing in every single game except Gaiden. Dragon Riders have often been considered one of the strongest classes by fans, and as their history goes on, you begin to realize that this is one of those things that the fandom is right about. Dragons have had a very strong history in the 30 plus years of Fire Emblem. But just how strong? How have they evolved from all the way back on the NES to now? And I intend to teach you all that today. So sit back and learn why riding a dragon is always a viable combat strategy. Before we get into the video, I would like to ask you to please like and comment on the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I know that asking for likes and comments before a video even begins is tacky, so I'm not asking, I'm threatening. If you don't like, comment, and subscribe, I'm going to find that niche YouTuber that you've been watching for over 10 years and have them suddenly stop uploading videos with no explanation, never to upload again.
There is no meme. This is just a threat.
Alright, let's lay down some ground rules. First of all, this is a video about the Dragon Rider units, not the characters. If I speak very highly or lowly of a unit, it is not saying that they're a bad character. If you're a fan of them, please don't take anything I say personally. Second of all, I am only talking about units that are recruitable in a main playthrough of a Fire Emblem game, not post-game bonuses. So units like Glenn, Gale, or Ashnard will not be talked about here. Just regular playthrough units. Third of all, when we get to the games where reclassing is an option, I'm going to at first talk about the class in a general sense, for the units that are naturally one, and units that can reclass into one, but when talking about units specifically, I'm only going to be talking about the units that are naturally Dragon Riders, and I'm going to be talking about them with Dragon Rider being their end destination. Reclassing to another class for skills is fine, but I'm going to talk about them staying in a dragon riding class as their end goal. Because if you're clicking on a video about Dragon Riders, you're not here to listen to me talk about Hero Baruka. And fourth, please understand that this is a video going across a 30-year franchise. I do my best to be well-informed and researched, but sometimes I get things wrong. If you ever disagree with something I say or think I forgot one detail, please remember that I'm the guy with a YouTube video, so my opinion matters more than you. Thank you. Also, a bonus add-on for only this video, I'm going to be starting with Fire Emblem 4 rather than Fire Emblem 1. This is because in Fire Emblem 1 and 3, Dragon Riders are the promoted version of Pegasus Knights. Because of this, I've already covered everything the class does in my Pegasus Knight video. It was kind of a catch-22, where I either talk about the White Wings and Sheeta in a Dragon Rider video, or talk about Minerva in a Pegasus Knight video, and I opted for the latter. So if you want to learn more about how the class began as a branch of Pegasus Knight, please go watch my Pegasus Knight video. And as for Fire Emblem Gaiden, Dragon Riders just outright don't exist in that game. There are dragons, but no one in all of Valencia has the balls to try to ride one. Which, given Necro Dragons, honestly might be a fair point. Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War was the first game in the series to make Dragon Riders their own distinct flying class separate from their Pegside brethren. And they make their identity pretty straightforward to understand. Pegasus Knights are the fast flyers, and Dragon Riders are the strong flyers, with Dragon Riders typically having very good health and physical defense, as well as great strength, at the cost of their speed and skill being a little lackluster, and their magical resistance essentially being non-existent. Promoted Dragon Riders have access to both lances and swords, and while Falcon Knights get access to staves for support, Dragon Riders get one more point of move. So there are pros and cons to each class, but Dragon Riders are still very powerful. Well, Dragon Rider, I should say, as you only get one Dragon Rider to play as in all of FE4. This is because the nation where all the dragons come from, Thracia, is distinctly an antagonistic nation for the entire game, so you don't really have any of them willing to help you until the very end. But how good does that lone Dragon Rider stand up? Well, Altena is the strongest unit in the entire game. I'm not lying. With her personal holy weapon and her strength stat, she is capable of the single strongest attack in the entire game. Unfortunately, outside of pushing agendas, that's not really too necessary, but thankfully, joke aside, she's still very powerful. She comes in pretty late into the second generation, but has the all-powerful Gay Bulge, a lance that lets her do a ton of damage, as I said before. She gets Pursuit upon promotion, allowing her to double attack, and her physical bulk will always be some of the highest in the game, so she has no problem standing out against physical enemies and mowing them down in a single shot. Unfortunately for Altena, the last two maps of Genealogy of the Holy War have a ton of mages in them, and this woman melts like paper to magical attacks. So while she's able to tank the front line well, there's going to be a lot of places where it's dangerous to leave Altena on the front lines, and given that she's a mobile frontline fighter, that's kind of a problem, though it is one that can be fixed. She makes for a very good recipient of one of the 2 barrier rings, increasing her resistance by 5. She also gets 5 resistance from a conversation with Corpri or Charlo in Chapter 10. Also, quick aside about that, you're telling me that in U-Draw Canon, there's a ward staff that permanently increases your magical resistance? Why the fuck aren't we using that more? Yeah, the conversation with Altena remarks that it's a very draining spell that could hurt the caster, but just don't have the small baby boy use it, give that staff to like Sed or someone, and then turn Seliph into an unkillable god, and then Lopter would be a stain on the ground in no time flat. I swear, if I were in charge, Fire Emblem 4 wouldn't have happened. I'd have stopped that shit. And she has the sword rank to equip the barrier sword, giving her another 7 magical resistance for a total of 17 extra magic resistance if the player puts in the effort for it. And Altena is well worth the effort, because she truly is one of the best killers in the second generation. Though it is true that by the point you get her, you have plenty of other powerful killers, like Ares, Seliph, Leaf, or Shannon, that can also do her job, her flyer utility still comes in handy in these last few maps in a few locations, specifically with Chapter 10, and getting to save the orphan children in time. And honestly, more important than saving the orphan children is getting the Typh Ring for Seliph. The only real mark against Altena that cannot be patched up is her availability. She does show up very late in the game, but for the few maps you have her available for, she's an incredibly competent flyer. As the lone representative of Dragon Riders in Fire Emblem 4, she leaves a damn good impression. Dragon Rider's return in Thracia 776 is largely what you would expect. They continue to be slower than Pegasus Knights, but still offer an incredible amount of bulk and power on the front lines with flyer utility. However, flying utility is much better in Thracia than in Genealogy, as Thracia was the game to introduce the rescue mechanic, allowing a flying unit, like a Dragon Rider, to pick up anyone they want and ferry them across a map very, very well, either to safety after they are left vulnerable on the front lines, or just getting them to the front lines faster. But beyond that, Dragon Riders are once again competent combat units, getting access to lances, which there are quite a few useful lances in Thracia, and can do a really good amount of damage. Their lone weakness, however, is dismounting. In Fire Emblem 5, every single mounted unit has to get off of their mount when they go indoors, and if an entire map is indoors, they're stuck off their mount the whole time and are only able to use swords. This is especially problematic for Dragon Riders, as they have the worst dismounting penalties in the entire game, losing a whopping 3 strength and 5 defense when they dismount, making them much weaker and much more frail. Still, having a high movement, high damage flyer is incredibly appreciated on quite a few maps, so the class does still find a lot of ways to be useful. Especially when one of the Dragon Riders you get is just cracked out of his mind. Dean is an absolute monster. He comes in about halfway through the game as a pre-promoted Dragon Knight with a ton of good things going for him. He has very good base stats, almost all of them being in the low teens, in a game where all stats cap at 20. He also possesses very good growth rates, so while his bases are strong already, he can very easily level up and become even stronger. He also has perfect weapon ranks, which, given how difficult it is to get up weapon ranks in Thracia, is a huge boon. He even has a follow-up critical coefficient of 3, meaning that his already powerful attacks are likely to be even more powerful because he'll crit a lot. He's just the complete package. And, as if that weren't enough, he also gets a personal weapon in the Dragon Pike, a powerful Brave Lance that also gives him the Vantage skill, allowing him to decimate pretty much anything in the game, and it makes him one of the most reliable units in the game at capturing enemies, which is very important in Thracia because enemies got some goodies. Simply put, Dean has everything you want. Good stats, good growths, good weapon levels, and a busted personal weapon. His only weakness is that he doesn't show up for half the game, because even the normal weakness of losing all that strength and defense when he dismounts can kind of be made up for by the fact that you can give him any sword in the game and he'll kick ass with it. Simply put, Dean is an amazing unit and should be considered for every single playthrough. On the flip side, his younger sister Ida is much worse, though she can work. Ida's main problem is that she shows up as an unpromoted Dragon Rider on the exact same map as Dean. She has a lot of stats to catch up to, and simply put, you often don't really need 3 flyers on one map. And since the player has likely had Karen well trained up this entire time, you really only need Karen and Dean, so there's not much incentive to train up Ida. Though, if you find yourself having to train up Ida because you're doing an Iron Man, or you're doing a draft run, or you just like her character design and want more Dragon Riders, you'll find that she's not too difficult to train up. Her incredibly good base Lance rank of B lets her deal pretty good damage right when you get her, though she will still need some help killing stronger enemies. She also has quite competent growth rates, and with the growth boosting scrolls, you can get her very powerful very quickly. In particular, the very next map after she joins, 14X, has a ton of pre-promoted Dark Bishops that you can just dismount her, give her the Paragon Sword, and let her rack up some easy kills, and that'll probably do something for you. That being said, if you're training Ida, it's because you want to. she is not a very good option for people who have access to Dean and Karen already. Though it is worth noting that Ida has a support with Dean, where they give each other 10% hit and avoid on the front lines, so that counts for something. And honestly, Dragon Riders in Thracia overall are still quite good. You have one unit who's a top dog in the entire game, only held back by his availability, and you have another unit that's very, very good if trained. A lot of classes would dream to have that kind of representation. So yeah, we've had 3 Dragon Riders back to back to back who are pretty good in some way. But, I hear you all saying, I thought Dragon Riders were broken as shit. Where's the unit that just carries the entire game on their back? A true S-tier unit at the upper echelons of the game that they're in. Well, my friends, just you wait for Fire Emblem Binding Blade. Wyvern Riders in Fire Emblem 6 are very, very scary. They are some of the most powerful enemies you'll ever face in a Fire Emblem game, as they consistently are incredibly bulky and incredibly powerful. Their existence means that fielding Walt just because he can use a bow is sometimes a valid strategy. That's how scary they are. When promoted, Wyvern Lords can soar through the sky with incredibly high move, the rescue mechanic returning from Fire Emblem 5, allowing them to ferry around units very well, and they'll be wielding lances and swords, so they have a lot of damage, a lot of bulk. Simply put, a Wyvern Rider is going to make you shit your pants at some point during the game. But what about your enemies? Don't you want them to shit their pants? Well, thankfully, Fire Emblem 6 has the woman for you. Murity is the goddess of the battlefield for Fire Emblem 6 fans. She comes in around the middle of the game, which I'm now realizing is a very recurring trend for the Dragon Rider classes, and she is amazing. She comes in with some very good base stats. She has incredible bulk, great strength and defense, and her speed and skill are enough, though with her good growth rates in them, they'll very quickly become more than enough. This is all because Murity comes in with hard mode bonuses, giving her the huge power boost against a difficulty that needs units with huge power boosts. She also can promote right away, coming in at level 10, and with the Elysian Whip, the flying class promotion item, being the only promotion item in FE6 that's given to the player in abundance. So even if you're using both of the other 2 flyers before her, you can promote her and have all 3 of them on the front lines. Though, if you don't want to play super efficiently and want to give her some juice before you really get her going, you can just give her a Horse Slayer and have her take care of all the reinforcements that show up on her join map, which will give her quite a few more level ups and will just make her an even bigger goddess once you promote her and have her handle the rest of the game. She's an auto-include from the moment you get her to the moment the credits roll. She is just damn good, and is always someone you should be thinking of when you're playing Fire Emblem 6. Just a damn good unit. In Fire Emblem 5, it was the older brother who was God, and the younger sister who needed a bit of work. While in Fire Emblem 6, the older sister is God, and the younger brother can need a little work. Zeus is the second and final Dragon Rider in Fire Emblem 6, and he occupies this game's Est archetype. He has very good growth rates, but he comes in unpromoted very late into the game. As such, it's not entirely worth it for the player to force him into their army if they have another unit they've been training up the whole game, but if the player chooses to do so, Zeus is going to grow into a second Murity, all the way down to him also getting hard mode bonuses, to the point where he really doesn't even come in that underpowered, outside of his weapon rank, which can be a bit of a problem for him. However, him being a Dragon Rider makes him a bit more useful than some of the other Ests in the series, as he's in a class that can let him really shine on the battlefield if you invest in him. And again, the Elysian Whip is very easy to get, so it's not hard to promote Zeus, even if you're using the other 3 flyers before him. The only other thing is that he is harder to use if you're going down the Sake route, as that route has a lot of bow units that even Zeus's incredible bulk will struggle against. But if you're going through Ilia, there's a lot of maps with a lot of mountains he loves to fly over, and he can be a big part of your army. It'll definitely take some stopping to drain Zeus up, but if that's something you want to do, you will be rewarded handsomely. Fire Emblem 6 is another game where Dragon Riders have a very good showing. Murdy is one of the best units in the entire game, and can be considered one of the best units in the entire GBA trilogy. And Zeus is still good. A solid showing, and just another game of dominance for the mighty Dragon Rider. Much like most classes in the franchise, the Wyvern Rider does not change at all from Fire Emblem 6 to Fire Emblem 7. They use lances before they promote, lances and swords once they promote, and they're very good at flying far ahead in battle and ferrying units across the map. So, with nothing to really talk about in the class department, we can just immediately start talking about individual units. Heath is the first Wyvern Rider recruited in Fire Emblem 7, and he is a low investment, high reward kind of unit. At base, Heath is decently powerful, but a little bit slow, and a little bit away from being able to consistently double and kill things on his own. But he possesses very competent growth rates and hard mode bonuses, which, while they aren't quite as insane as Fire Emblem 6's, are still appreciated. So if you just give him a wee little bit of babying, Heath will become one of your strongest units. Much like other Dragon Riders in the franchise though, Heath's join time is not the greatest, showing up about halfway through Ellawood and Hector's campaign. You would really like him to be around longer than that, but it is worth noting that he makes use of the time that he has, becoming a very, very competent frontline fighter, and someone you should consider using in your Fire Emblem 7 playthrough. He also becomes much better if you skip Lin mode, as if you do that, Florina's going to have a lot harder of a time being your main flyer, and Heath can fulfill that role with a bit less investment. So that's worth bearing in mind. The other Dragon Rider that you get is Vida, and she is your typical late game pre-promote. You only have her for about 4 or 5 maps, and she is quite useful in those maps, possessing incredible physical bulk, great strength, perfect AA weapon ranks, at the cost of being on the slower side with poor resistance. Her speed is the biggest problem with her, as it might be high enough to double some of the generic goons, but she will struggle to double anything that's moderately fast, though thankfully Fire Emblem 7 enemies often don't know what the speed stat is. If you've trained up Heath or any of the 3 White Wings, they're going to be better flyers than her, but she's still more than able to hold her own, and if you're doing an Iron Man or a draft run and you have to use Vida, she can contribute a lot more than you would think. Not exactly game-breaking, but just a good late-game unit to help the player out if they need to rely on her. Before we move on, I'll acknowledge that this has nothing to do with anything, but can Intelligent Systems pick what fucking color her Wyvern is? In game, it's black. In Cypher, it's green and red. And then in Heroes, it's red again. Just pick a color and stick with it, my god. Yet again, Fire Emblem 7 is a good showing for the Dragon Rider classes. They have not slowed down yet, and spoiler for the next game, they're not going to slow down anytime soon. In Sacred Stones, Wyvern Riders into Wyvern Lords are still the exact same. Lances into Lances and Sword, Rescue, Fairy, blah 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 blah, you understand that by now. The addition that Sacred Stones makes is branching promotions, giving Wyvern Riders a new promotion in the Wyvern Knight class, which is also available to Pegasus Knights, returning Dragon Riders as a potential upgrade for the first time since Arcanea. Wyvern Knights ditch the ability to use swords, instead becoming a lance-locked class, in exchange for 3 more points of speed. Either 3 more raw speed if you're going from Wyvern Rider to Wyvern Knight, or 3 more points of constitution if you're going from Pegasus Knight to Wyvern Knight. And given how flimsy the arms of Pegasus Knights are, that's almost always going to translate to 3 more attack speed. And a class skill in Pierce, taking the Wyvern Knight's level as a percentage chance to ignore enemy defense. This is a very powerful skill, and the increase in constitution makes their combat much better. Also, swords are kind of... what's the word I'm looking for? Garbage in the GBA games. So having your Pegasus Knight or Wyvern Rider give them up to become a Wyvern Knight really isn't that big of a downside. They're just a very, very good class, whose actual downside is that they will crash your game. Wyvern Knights have a glitch known as the Pierce glitch, where if Pierce activates on a 2-range attack from a Wyvern Knight, and it does a certain amount of damage, your game will crash, and you will have to restart the chapter. This happened to me my very first time making it to the end game of Sacred Stones, where after beating the game and I unlocked Volter in the Lagdu Ruins, he activated the Pierce glitch on his first attack as a unit in my army, forcing me to restart the entire Lagdu Ruins. Volter is such a piece of shit that he literally crashed my game the second he could. The prick.
Just say it, please tell me that I can say it.
You should kill yourself.
If you want to avoid this glitch, all you have to do is turn animations off. Because what happens is when Pierce activates, the Wyvern Knight's animation for its double attack will sometimes trigger before the enemy's HP is finished depleting. And then the game won't know what the fuck to do with itself, and it will die. So just don't have animations on, and you won't have this problem. Still, crashing your game is not enough for Wyvern Knights to not be considered one of the best classes in Sacred Stones. Tana, Vanessa, and Cormag would all love to be one, and there's really nothing stopping you from making all 3 of them one. Speaking of, Cormag is the lone Wyvern Rider in Sacred Stones, at least naturally, and he is very powerful. The class is very strong, as I just got done explaining. He literally spawns in with an Elysian Whip in his inventory, allowing you to instantly promote him if you want, and his growth rates and bases are all very good. He is just yet another damn good representation for Wyvern Riders. Though it is worth noting, he is much better in Ephraim's route than Erica's. In Ephraim's route, he shows up on Chapter 10 and can be recruited as early as Turn 2 if you're willing to do some baiting shenanigans with Tana. Meanwhile, on Erica route, he doesn't show up until Chapter 13 and quite late in Chapter 13. In fact, Cormag's late arrival on Erica's route is kind of a bigger problem than you would think, because he shows up on Turn 5. Now that doesn't really sound too bad, but Chapter 13 on Erica's route is a map that ends as soon as you kill the boss. And the boss of that chapter is very close to where you and your unit spawn. It is not uncommon for someone playing Sacred Stones for the first time to completely miss recruiting Cormag because they just don't know that he shows up on that map. Source, me. When I was a child playing Sacred Stones for the first time, I did not recruit Cormag. He was the only unit in the game I didn't get because I just beat that map too quickly and he never showed up. So yeah, he's a really good unit as long as you don't forget about him.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
But The qualities of the Wyvern Knight class and usefulness of Core Mag aside, the next game in the series is about to give Wyvern Riders what is quite possibly their most important shakeup in the series. For you see, in the GBA games, they made Wyvern Riders' weapons the exact same as Falcon Knights. They both were lance-locked units unpromoted, and then got lances and swords on promotion. So while the characters and units of the two classes were separate, the classes still had a feeling of being a little samey. So Fire Emblem Path of Radiance decided to replace swords with axes for a Wyvern Rider's secondary weapon. And this is quite possibly the best decision that could have been made. It's so important that if you were to ask someone in the fandom right now to name the weapon that a Wyvern Rider uses, they're going to tell you axes, even though that just wasn't true for over half the franchise. Axes, because of Teleus, have become synonymous with the Wyvern Rider's identity. And on top of that, Path of Radiance was the best game to possibly make this decision in, as axes are probably the strongest they are in the entire franchise in this game, with a lot of late game enemies using lances, and access to easily forging steel axes makes the weapon type highly desirable. And in addition to that, Fire Emblem 9 is a very mount-dominant game due to the powerful Kanto effect, allowing units to use up all of their remaining move after attacking, making any mounted unit very, very good with positioning. So Wyvern Riders have the best weapon type, the best kind of class, they're just really, really good in this game. And if you want proof, look no further than Jill, a unit who requires low investment, but gets godly payoff for doing so. She does start out a little weak, as Jill will struggle to reliably kill things, and will die pretty quickly, but she's benefited from being in Path of Radiance, the game where it is quite possibly the easiest to grind up a weak unit. Path of Radiance has bonus experience, so you can just pump all of that into Jill, and she'll go from struggling to kill things to completely dominant very, very quickly. Her growth rates are very good. As we've established, her weapons are very good. She's just going to be an amazing unit on the front lines. The only thing to say about Jill is she's uniquely the only unit in the franchise who the enemy can use Talk no Jutsu on to get to come to their side, though this is very, very easily avoidable by just not having Jill talk to her father. It's more so a neat gameplay quirk and some cool world building, rather than something you actually have to feel threatened by. Actually, I want to ask. This is not me trying to engagement farm for comments, I genuinely want to know. Have you, yes you, playing Fire Emblem Path of Radiance for the first time, accidentally gotten Jill to defect? I want to know if that's ever happened to someone on their first playthrough, rather than it being something you find out about after the fact. I'm really curious. Also, I am aware of the irony in going, how could anyone have accidentally lost Jill when I admitted to accidentally losing Core Mag not even 5 minutes ago, so don't bother pointing that out. While Har is mostly known for his god-tier performance in Radiant Dawn, his Path of Radiance performance shouldn't be underlooked. He serves a similar role to Vida. He shows up quite late in the game, but has very good stats, very good growths, very good weapon ranks, and is a very, very solid filler unit. And if you want to use him long term, there's really nothing wrong with him being a permanent unit too. He's just in a good class with good bases. There's not really too much complicated about him. He does come in with the skill Cancel, which can kind of be funny sometimes, but Har is bulky enough that he usually isn't worried about whatever's counterattacking him. So really, he's just a good ball of stats. Those units are always appreciated, but there's just not a lot to talk about them with. Once again, Wyvern Riders are an amazing class, but would you believe me if I said that despite how consistently good they've been in every game, it's actually uphill from here? Because Radiant Dawn is insane for them. The world around them has actually changed to benefit them even more, as Radiant Dawn has the ledge mechanic, where some maps have you climbing vertically, and this makes it so that units on top get more accuracy and can attack down the ledge. The main important thing is that ledges are there to kind of nerf how dominant cavalry was in Path of Radiance. And it works. Paladins are still a useful class, but aren't nearly the best class in the game. However, the ledge mechanic does nothing to stop how dominant flying units are, and Wyvern Riders take great advantage of this, being able to get around any map in the game, fly all around the ledges that your infantry and cavalry have to worry about. They're just incredibly powerful. As for changes to Wyvern Riders specifically, they have two. The first is that they have lost their weakness to bows, instead becoming weak to thunder magic. This is an absolute dragon win, because thunder magic is kind of shit from a butt in Radiant Dawn, being inaccurate and relatively uncommon. Conversely, bows are now a bigger threat than ever, with crossbows being basically anti-flyer machines that will pick even the strongest of your flyers out of the sky. So this change in weakness essentially means Wyvern Riders have no weakness. The other change is that axes went from their secondary weapon to their primary weapon. This mostly just affects tier 1 units, as they are now axe-locked, but that's really not that big of a deal because axes are still really good in Radiant Dawn. Simply put, Wyvern Riders are a fantastic class here. And that's before you even get into the two representatives of the class, who are still Jill and Har, but are now even better than they were before. Jill is an insane unit, because I personally believe Radiant Dawn Jill is one of the most overrated units in the franchise, and yet she's still a top of A tier unit and one of the best in the Dawn Brigade. She's their only consistent flyer, as Vika's availability is laughable, and that does matter for a few Dawn Brigade maps. She also is of a very powerful class, and has very good stat caps as she reaches them. In particular, she is very fast and very bulky, something that the Dawn Brigade is in desperate need of. And her long-term potential is arguably the best of the entire Dawn Brigade, with some of the best growth rates you'll find in there. But Jill's problems all come down to her base stats. She is, much like Path of Radiance, quite weak at base, decently tanky, but not strong enough to kill anything. And this is much worse in Radiant Dawn than before because of the changes to how bonus experience work. She's going to need some stat boosters to start to become good. And while if you throw a Seraph Robe, an Energy Drop, and a Draco Shield at her, she'll do really well, you could also just give those items to Zahark or Volig, and they'll do just as well. But that being said, though Jill is very weak at base and needs heavy investment to be good, the payoff is truly worth it. An invested in Jill will carry the Dawn Brigade in their Part 3 maps and the end of their Part 1 maps. An invested in Jill will be able to be used beyond Part 3 and make a very strong candidate for your ultimate axe user in the tower. There is true payoff to investing in Jill stocks. I just think a lot of Radiant Dawn fans don't realize how heavy you have to invest. Still, I do believe she's one of the better units in Radiant Dawn. Not just because the average Radiant Dawn unit is actual shit, but because she does have merits to her. I just think a lot of people think she's S tier, second best unit in the game behind Har, and Jill, honey, you're no Har. No one is Har. Har is coming for you. Har is absolutely ridiculous in Radiant Dawn, and it's honest to God, not even for complicated reasons. He just has good stats, and he's actually around for most of the game. That's it. Radiant Dawn availability is one of the dumbest things to discuss in the Fire Emblem franchise, because so many units are absolutely screwed by it. Some units are impossible to tier normally because they're only useful on 1 or 2 maps, but they literally save the run on those 1 or 2 maps, so how do you really rank them? It's a lot of bullshit that's just not at all a problem for Har. He shows up on Part 2. He is there for only 2 maps, which doesn't sound like a lot, but Part 2 is only 5 maps. And then he's there virtually from the start of Part 3, and he's there for almost all of Part 3 because he's with the Grail Mercenaries. So with this, you just have Har around more than almost any other unit. And so, he's actually able to use his really good stats. His base stats are ridiculous. Part 2 doesn't have any units that you really give a shit about long term, so you can just dump all the bonus experience from Alencia's Gambit into Har, and probably even have him as a tier 3 unit in Part 2. He's really good at doing the easy clear of Alencia's Gambit by just killing Ludwig because the dumbass is just standing there way too close to Har than anyone should be, and then when you get him for Ike, you can just throw him in the middle of maps and he doesn't give a shit. His strength is insane. He will kill things. His movement is insane. He will go wherever the fuck he damn well pleases. His only Achilles heel, his poor speed, can easily be mended with bonus experience because of the changes to how it works in Radiant Dawn. He'll cap his strength and defense very quickly, so because bonus experience forces 3 stats every level up, that will eventually just become his speed. And his innate weakness to thunder magic sounds like it should be a really big problem, but thunder magic is worse than poop from a butt. It's shit from an ass. No thunder mage is really going to have a good chance to hit him, and if they do, he'll just kill them in 1 hit on the goddamn player phase. There is nothing stopping Har from destroying Radiant Dawn. He is just the ultimate unit in a game that has so many units that suck ass. So he looks even better by comparison. When people tell you Har is the dumbest unit in Radiant Dawn and one of the best units in the franchise, they are not kidding. He is really that dominant for no investment. The only thing truly keeping him from being considered the best unit in the franchise is the fact that the other contenders like Sigurd and Seth are there from the very start of their games, and Har, while he has incredible availability for Radiant Dawn standards, isn't there for the entire Dawn Brigade, where as we established with Jill, they would have really liked someone like Har to be around. But still, he is ridiculous. Everything you hear people say about him is true. Radiant Dawn is an amazing game for the Har class. Har is fucking dumb, and I love him. Just like with how I already covered Dragon Riders in the original Arcanea games in the Pegasus Knight video, I did the same thing for them in the remakes. So if you want a more in-depth look, go check out that video. All I can say is the era of Arcanea's Grand Dragon Riders being beautiful women is over. It is now crusty old man season, with Jagan and Wendell being very, very strong help in the early game should you choose to reclass them into Dragon Riders. But other than the thrill of old men on dragons, There's not too much else to say that you can't find out somewhere else. So we're moving on. Moving on to Fire Emblem Awakening, and Dragon Riders are continuing to be an axe class like they were in Tellius, and they have the same advantages that they've always had: very good bulk and flyer utility. It's also worth noting that due to the pair-up mechanic, any unit can just jump onto a Wyvern Rider and get ferried around very easily, so flyers in particular are quite useful in Awakening. In terms of new stuff, Wyvern Riders did get a new branching promotion. One of them is the same old reliable Wyvern Lord it's always been, but the other is a brand new class called Griffin Rider, which, even before I get into the stats and skills, I just really appreciate how Awakening was willing to give another fantastical mount out. You have Pegasus, you have Wyvern, Griffin. It's just neat that they got creative with it. In terms of skills, the Wyvern Rider's base skill is Strength +2. Simple, helpful, you'll drop it when you get access to better skills. And their level 10 skill is Tantivy, giving them hit and evasion plus 10% if no allies are within 3 spaces. Even if you don't want to have your Wyvern Rider fucking off and doing their own thing, you can still activate this on player phase by having your Wyvern Rider be the first unit that moves. Though, admittedly, the buffs they would get from support probably outweigh the positive on this one. As for Wyvern Lords, their level 5 skill is Quick Burn. They get 15% more hit and avoid at the start of a chapter, with that decreasing by 1 every turn. This is a very useful ability, especially when a lot of Awakening maps are cleared quite quickly. And even if they aren't, a fairly substantial hit and evasion increase for the cost of doing jack shit is pretty great, so it's a very good skill to have. And the Wyvern Lord's level 15 skill is Swordbreaker, giving a hit and evasion boost of 50% if the enemy is equipped with a sword. Given how high speed and evasive some sword enemies can be, especially if you're doing Awakening's DLCs, this skill can be a lifesaver, so it's really a good selection of skills for the Wyvern Lord. As for the new guy, the Griffin Rider class line sacrifices the ability to use lances as a secondary weapon in exchange for getting some very useful movement-based support, giving an extra point of movement as a pair-up bonus compared to Wyvern Lord, and having the level 5 skill Deliverer, getting +2 movement when paired up with someone. So you just have someone ferry onto the Griffin Rider, they get 2 more move, and then they'll either use that move to fly somewhere and kill an enemy themselves, or just swap with the unit that gave them the Deliverer buff, and just have that unit kill everything now that you've plopped them on the front lines. It's a very, very helpful support skill. And their level 15 skill is Lancebreaker. It's Swordbreaker, but lances. A very helpful skill, even if it's something we just talked about, basically. So it seems like this is another fantastic game for the Wyvern Rider class. Well, not exactly. While Wyvern Riders and Griffin Riders are very good in a vacuum, they do have to consider the world around them. First of all, while the Griffin Rider's movement is very, very helpful, Awakening is probably the only game in the series where 2 free movement for pair-up isn't game-breaking, because Awakening's main way of cheating out movement is through the infinitely buyable rescue staves. So while Deliverer will see some use on some specific LTC strategies, the main movement shenanigans are with rescue, so this isn't really a game for that to flourish. The other problem is that this game fucking hates the concept of wyverns, because there's a ton of magic and archery in the mid to late game that is waiting to prey upon your Wyvern Riders. While your Wyverns are going to be decently tanky, they are not tanky enough to eat the effective damage they're going to be seeing multiple times on the map. And you can't have them reliably frontline if you have to start watching out for enemy archers and mages. So they just can't quite do the role that they want to do into the late game. Still, their benefits are still good. If you're willing to work around their weaknesses, you can slap on an impressive Wyvern Lord or Griffin Knight, and they will help you. It's just a lot harder than it's been in games prior. The best time for Wyvern Riders is in the early game with a reclass on someone like Frederick or Pan. However, as for the natural Wyvern Riders, Cherche is your lone representation of the class in the first generation of Awakening. And she's not that terrible, actually. The map she shows up on is an amazing moment for her. She's level 12 at base, so she can instantly promote. She comes in with a hammer, and there's a ton of armor knights there. It's really not difficult to promote her immediately, give her that hammer, and level her up to 5 quickly for some deliverance shenanigans with Griffin Knight. And, as the game goes on, she will be tanky for a little bit. But the problem with her is that she does not have very good staying power. As the archers and magic and just general enemy strength increases, Cherche is not going to be able to keep up on the front lines. She's not going to be tanky enough, and she's not going to do enough damage. Still though, for a decent mid-game clutch, you can do a lot worse, and she wants an instant promotion on the map where you can start buying infinite master seals. So there's really no investment to have a pretty good filler unit for some tough maps in Valm. Not amazing, definitely one of the weaker Wyvern Riders in the series, but if useful mid-game support filler is the worst your class has, you've been doing a damn good job. Unfortunately, her son's going to show up, and he probably is one of the worst Wyvern Riders in the entire series. Jerome doesn't suffer from any unique problem. He suffers from the same thing every child unit in Awakening suffers from. By the time that you can get him, you've had a bunch of first-generation units who are doing his job probably better than he is. But Jerome has it even worse than the others. Not only is he going to be one of the last children you recruit, just on the fact that his mother is the last mother to join in the entire first generation, his map is also just very difficult, with enemy stats being akin to those that you would see in Chapter 22 or 21, the end game, and you're just gonna struggle if you actually try to recruit him as early as you can. So because of this, Jerome just doesn't have enough time to really do anything. The best thing you can do with him is have his mother pass down Deliverer, but if you're doing that, you already have Cherche with that. You don't need Jerome too, it's just not doing anything. He's just in a really, really awkward space. Like every child unit in Awakening, if you really like his character, you can baby him, you can grind him up, and he can become a carry. But you can say that about every child in Awakening. Jerome just doesn't have anything special to him that really makes him stand out. He's just not that good. Awakening is definitely one of the weaker games for the Wyvern Rider class. It's not outright awful, there isn't a game in the series where it's outright awful, but I feel like, in my opinion, Awakening is the closest it gets. Thankfully, just like with everything regarding Awakening's gameplay, Fates comes along and makes everything better. Wyverns are much stronger in this game. They just have more units, those units are much better, and the class in general is stronger. Wyvern Rider into Wyvern Lord functions the same in regards to its movement and its weapons, and its first and final skills are the same. Strength plus 2 is the innate Wyvern Rider skill, and Swordbreaker is the level 15 Wyvern Lord skill, both of which are very useful for their respective points in the game. Special note to Swordbreaker, as enemy heroes and swordmasters can be some of the more threatening enemies you'll come across, so being able to tell them to go shove it up their ass is a very valuable skill. In between, though, there have been some adjustments. Wyvern Rider's level 10 skill is now Lunge, the ability to switch places with your opponent after attacking them. This is really useful. Being able to manage the position of your units is one of the most important things in any grid-based game, but in Fates in particular, this skill is very useful because of enemy pair-up. Being able to walk up to a dude and lunge him away from his pair-up buddy can make some enemy formations go from daunting to pathetic, and Wyvern Riders are uniquely very good at doing that. And the level 5 Wyvern Lord skill is now Rally Defense, one of the best skills in the entire game, though it's quite weird on your Wyvern Riders, as normally you want them on the front lines doing sick Wyvern shit and not supporting your other units, but it is still a very powerful utility tool to have. Wyvern Riders and Wyvern Lords are both really nice classes. And on the flip side, their alternate promotion has been reworked entirely. Griffins have been removed. Now you have the Malignite class, trading out lances as a Wyvern Rider secondary weapon for magical tomes. This is a change that kinda makes sense in my opinion, as Falcon Knights have had an on-again, off-again relationship with Staves for a supporting role, so since Wyvern Riders are meant to be Pegasus Knights opposite, give them offensive magic. And Malignites can use it decently well to become a pretty good mixed attacker class, though their stat caps are a little low, and a lot of the Wyvern Riders that could become one struggle with magic. There are plenty of ways to get around this. In particular, Malignite is a very powerful final class for Elise and Corrin to reclass into, so even if your normal Wyvern Riders struggle with dealing mixed damage, there are ways to get powerful mages into that class. As for skills, Malignites at level 5 get Savage Blow. After battle with an enemy, all enemies within 2 tiles take 20% of their health as damage. Spread damage is useful. Percentage health-based damage is also useful. Getting able to deplete even just one unit's health off of Savage Blow without even having to touch them is very helpful. It comes into play a lot more than you would think because Fates is built around pair-up, so a lot of enemies are grouped together, which makes Savage Blow really fucking sexy. And the Malignite's level 15 skill is Trample, the ability to have a creature deal its excess damage to your opponent's life after it's been blocked. Sorry. I used to be a big Magic the Gathering player, and the spirit of Craterhoof Behemoth possessed me. Trample deals 5 more damage to enemies who are unmounted. When doubling, that's a free 10 damage, and there are quite a few threatening unmounted enemies for Trample to help against. It's a very powerful skill with a very simple activation that has no real downside even if it doesn't activate. Simply put, Malignite's skills are quite solid. The class is strong, even if there are very few units who can actually use its mixed offenses effectively. But alright, the class has some strong things going for it, but that doesn't mean anything if the units in it aren't good. Spoilers, Camilla is pretty fucking good. She comes in as a pre-promote fairly early into Conquest's runtime, and she can just run away with the game entirely on her own. With base stats that require no investment and growth rates that make investing in her worth it, Camilla is just a frankly ridiculous unit, and will be an auto-include in pretty much every Conquest run. She does good physical damage. She does good magical damage. Her personal skill increases the damage and bulk of your allies on the front lines when they're next to her. She lays down support. She lays down damage. Camilla is just one of the best units in the entire game, and you'll find very few people who are willing to argue that point. Camilla is so powerful, she doesn't even get fucked by revelations, which a lot of units do. Rather than showing up at Chapter 10, now she shows up at the end of Chapter 12. And given how some units get fucked over by their recruitment, Camilla just doesn't. You just don't have her for a map and a half more. There's really no downside to this woman. She is the Wyvern Rider with no weaknesses.
Come on, hurry up!
Pop quiz! What is about to interrupt the Camilla boob bounce cutscene? Is it A. Virgil, B. Frederick Fazbear, or C. some other dumb bullshit? The answer is... Now, wait a minute, I hear you ask. Why are you talking about the pre-promo before the regular Wyvern Rider? Well, that's because Baruka, the unpromoted Wyvern Rider of Fates, shows up at the exact same time as Camilla. So this gives her a very bad first impression. If you're looking at her next to Camilla, you're going to notice how Camilla absolutely mogs her. And then a lot of players are just going to bench her. But here's the thing. These ladies don't have to fight. You can use 2 Wyvern Riders. And if you invest in Baruka, you get a unit that is a solid not bad out of 10. Let's start with what she has going for her. Baruka is very accurate. Due to her very good skill and luck, she's often going to be hitting at a more consistent rate than any of your other axe units, which, given how shaky some hit rates can be in the late stages of Conquest, is a genuine boon. Her physical stats are also quite good, with a solid strength stat allowing her to do pretty good damage, combined with her skill Opportunist, which deals 4 damage to enemies that can't counterattack. She can punish enemies pretty goddamn well, and her defense is nothing to scoff at, being one of the better defense stats and growth rates in Conquest. So she's got good bulk, good movement, and good accuracy. So what's the problem? Well, as with many a great unit, it's the speed stat. Baruka is just straight up not very fast. And while pair-ups and tonics can help this, it's not going to change the fact that you're going to need someone with Baruka to help her speed for pretty much the entire game. She will consistently struggle to double. And her other problem is her HP stat is actually very bad, so her physical bulk is not quite as good as it should be with her great defense, and her magical bulk is non-existent. Her stats aside, she does also benefit from her reclass options for skills. While she always wants to end up in Wyvern Lord, you can take a detour in the hero line for Soul, which has a very high chance of activating with her high skill, or Berserker for Rally Strength and Axe Fair, which can help her damage and support. It's a joke to call Baruka the Dragon Rider that's balanced, because that's really what she is. Her poor speed and health don't make her bad, they just make her a good unit. Baruka is good. She doesn't break the game open like Camilla or Wyvern Riders past, she's just a useful unit to have around, and remember, it's not a matter of whether or not Baruka is better than Camilla. It's a matter of whether or not Baruka is better than the 15th Joe Schmo you can choose to deploy, and it's not that hard to make Baruka better than that guy. And in Fire Emblem Conquest 2nd Generation, you get the 3rd Wyvern Rider, Percy, who has a strong case to make for being the best child unit in Fire Emblem Conquest. Being a Wyvern Rider is already really good, but given that his father is Arthur, that plays into his benefit really well. Since Arthur is one of the first eligible fathers you can get, it's not hard to have Arthur paired off with someone really quickly. So Percy could be the first child unit you get, thus giving him great availability. You also really want to rush getting to his map, because his map has a lot of opportunity to gain money. And since Conquest players are greedy little rat bastards, this means a lot of them are going to prioritize getting to Percy. So with good availability and good growth rates and bases, he can be slapped onto your team right away. As for what Percy's going to do long term, that's kinda gonna depend on who his mother is. With a powerful physical attacking mother like Effie or Charlotte, he's going to be a great damage dealer. If you want to have him be a bit more of a support unit, since he'll have Rally Defense by Wyvern Lord, potentially Rally Strength inherited from Arthur, you can have Percy snag the Pegasus Knight class line from either Azura or Baruka, and then he'll be able to learn Rally Speed, and then you've got a Wyvern Lord with 3 rallies, absurd luck, and an aura that boosts everyone else's critical avoid for the ultimate support unit, rivaling the likes of Rallyman. Percy is truly a fantastic child. Even if support Wyvern Lord is grounds previously unheard of, he does a damn good job with it. He's just really good no matter what you want to do. Oh, and if you're playing Revelations, Percy's going to be worse just on the account that Arthur comes in much later, but Revelations players are also greedy rats, so you still want to get his paralog either way, though you're probably just going to bench him immediately in Revelations. You still want to see him, which is something. Wyvern Riders in Fates are also unique in the fact that they're not locked to the nation they're supposed to be. Though Wyverns are considered a Norian class, you do get one Wyvern Rider on the Birthright route with Scarlet, who fulfills the role of a solid mid-game pre-promote. Her stats are competent. Her growth rates are competent. Scarlet is not going to break the game open by any means, but she is going to be a solid addition to your army if you're Iron Manning and some units are dead, or you just want a bit of help in the mid-game while you get the rest of your units online. Scarlet is going to do a fine job. Good bulk, good damage, good class. She's just something you can slap in your army immediately, and you can either leave her there forever, or take her off in a few maps when your units are ready to stand on their own. Throughout this series, I have covered a lot of units like Scarlet, and though they're boring to talk about, they are always respected for what they do. Thank goodness for those solid pre-promotes that I'm going to thank even if no one else will. And by God, if there is ever a mid-game pre-promote in need of some love, it is Scarlet. Because holy shit, does Fire Emblem Fates Revelation not like Scarlet. Okay, so given that there are no Wyvern Riders in Fire Emblem Echoes, because Gaiden doesn't like dragons, we are now on to Fire Emblem Three Houses, where if you are aware of anything about gameplay discussion, you might be thinking that I'm about to jack off Wyverns for the next 20 minutes. And though that would get me demonetized, it would not be incorrect. Wyvern Riders in Three Houses are incredibly powerful, and without a doubt the best class in the game. Not only is Three Houses a game where mounted utility is incredibly useful, Wyvern Riders themselves have really good stats, and the classes you need to get into Wyvern Rider are very, very helpful to take. Wyvern Riders in Three Houses use axes, lances, and flight, and if you've been watching this series to this point, you know where I'm about to go here. If you want to use axes, you're going to pass through the Brigand class line, giving you one of the best offensive skills in the game in Death Blow, giving you 6 more damage if you initiate an attack for a potential 12 more damage. Wyvern Riders also want flight, so for the ladies in your army, you can send them down Pegasus Knight to get Darting Blow, which is the exact same thing as the other one, but for speed. So you've got incredible utility, incredible bulk, very useful skills to get to the classes, and as for the classes' skills themselves, Wyvern Rider gives you innate access to Axe Fair, making your axe attacks deal 5 more damage, and Mastery gives you Seal Defense, lowering an enemy's defense by 6 after you battle with them. Seal Defense admittedly isn't too useful, as your Wyvern Rider is either fucking killing whatever it looks at, and if it doesn't, you shouldn't need Seal Defense to finish the job, so that's not that good, but free Axe Fair is free Axe Fair, because every enemy in Fire Emblem is weak to dying. And as for Wyvern Lord, the ultimate class, not only do they still have an innate access to Axe Fair, they also get an innate access to Evasion plus 10. Because sure, Fire Emblem Three Houses, why not make the tank a dodge tank too? Fuck it, who cares? Mastery over Wyvern Lord gets you Defiant Critical, giving you 50% crit when your HP is a quarter or less. This comes in very late due to it being the master skill of a master class, but by God, if you weren't killing anything before, well congratulations, you're killing it now. And because Wyvern Lords are just a tanky class in and of itself, you can kind of survive on quarter HP without any real problems. This class is ridiculously strong, though there are two things that kind of balance them. First of all, the Wyvern Rider class lines are available quite late, not being accessed until you can get advanced class lines at level 20. So you're not really going to have Wyvern Riders, at least consistently, until the time skip. Though granted, you still have half the game left at that point, so that's not really the biggest nerf imaginable. The actual real balance to them is battalions. Battalions are a huge part of Fire Emblem Three Houses unit building, as giving the right battalion to someone can increase their relevant stats by a whopping 7 or 8 points, and there are only so many high-level flying battalions going around. So because of this, you can really only comfortably field a few Wyvern Lords before you're taking some hefty stat penalties because you just don't have enough battalions to go around. So when people say Wyvern Lords are the best class in Fire Emblem Three Houses, that doesn't mean you should make every single unit in your army a Wyvern Rider. What it means is that whatever units you make into Wyvern Riders are going to be the most powerful units in your army, and that pretty much every physical unit in the game can work as a Wyvern Rider, even if they have a Bane to one of the 3 things you need to make one. They are definitely the strongest class in the game, but there are plenty of other classes like War Master or Sniper that can also contribute really well. Wyvern Riders definitely deserve the jacking off they get from the fandom in this game, but maybe rest your hand every once in a while. In terms of natural Wyvern Riders, there are only 2 in all of Three Houses, Cyril and Seteth. Now Cyril I already covered in my Villager video, because while that class doesn't exist in Three Houses, Cyril is spiritually a villager, so I covered him there. So for this video, we only are gonna cover one dude. Thankfully, that one dude is really solid. Seteth is a fantastic pre-promote, coming in at the very end of the first generation, and outside of Gilbert or Yuritsa, is going to be the last unit you get in the game. He is just a free addition to your army. He needs no training, he can just be slapped in there right away, and if you like him, you can keep him there for the rest of the game. His only flaw is his join time. By the time you get him, you've completed the first half of the game, you've likely done a ton of paralogs, and you have your students with their roster set. So Seteth coming along and asking you to break the mold you've spent half the game making is a big ask for some people, but he's honestly going to contribute more than a lot of students. With his powerful class, powerful strength, good speed, a great personal skill if you've got a lot of ladies going around, and if you want some support, he comes with rally defense and can eventually get rally resistance. Great offenses, great support. If he's going to be the lone representation of Dragon Riders for Three Houses here, he's a damn good bit of representation. And a little bit of a pro tip here, invest in his lance rank a little bit until he learns Swift Strikes, which lets him get 2 consecutive attacks. Really, really useful skill. But even without it, He's just a damn good unit, and Fire Emblem Three Houses is another damn good game for the class. And at last, we have the most recent entry with Fire Emblem Engage. And like the Arcanea games, I've already discussed Dragon Riders a little bit in this game. As, like Arcanea, they evolve from Pegasus Knights. So if you want a truly in-depth look, I would recommend watching my Pegasus Knight video. But the long and short of it is that Pegasus Knights can promote into either Wyvern Rider or the returning Griffin Knight class, and both of them have actually pretty good ups and downs, with Griffins being faster and more magically inclined, and Wyvern Riders being bulkier and stronger with a more physically inclined stat line. They're both really good classes and are equally worth looking into. But, even though I already covered the class, there are a few units who are uniquely Dragon units and don't dabble in Pegasus at all, so we can go over them. Ivy asks the player a very important question. Would you still love the most powerful and most beautiful woman you've ever seen if she couldn't hit the broadside of a fucking barn? Ivy has a lot going for her. Her raw magic is something to be feared. Combine that with her Wyvern's high movement, and she is incinerating a ton of enemies all over the map. And her bulk is also very, very good, letting her tank a lot of hits if she ever needs to. High damage, high bulk, high movement, she is truly one of Engage's best units. But just because you're the best doesn't mean you don't have problems. Ivy's dexterity is bad. She really struggles to consistently hit things, though with her personal skill and some supports, that can somewhat be alleviated, but the chance for frustration will always be there. And on the other side, her speed is also quite poor. Without some Lyn Emblem support, Ivy might struggle to double a lot of enemies, and for the particularly fast ones like heroes, Ivy might struggle to double them even with Lyn. Still, her damage and movement cannot be understated. Ivy is an incredible unit and is worth putting on every one of your playthroughs. You just have to be ready to deal with that hit rate. Maybe get a Forge Bolganone, or keep the Divine Pulse close at hand, because Ivy is gonna start looking an awful lot like Focus Blast. Rosado is the last Dragon Rider you get in the base game, and frankly, I should have covered him back in the Pegasus Knight video, but I'll have to be honest with you, I completely forgot he existed, and there's a good reason for that. Rosado is, frankly, one of the worst units in the entire game. His base stats are just horrendous for the point that you get him, and though his growth rates are competent, you are just surrounded by so many better options. By this point, you've had Ivy, you've had Kagetsu, Zelkov, Marin, Panette, so many units that are just so much better than him. And if you specifically wanted a Wyvern Rider, you could have reclassed Kagetsu or Marin into one, and they're gonna run circles around him. In doing research for this video, I've learned that if you reclass Linden into a Dragon Rider, the old-ass mage, he has equal strength and defense to him. Rosado is just bad. He's really bad. Perhaps not quite to Benet garbage, but he's pretty close. If you really, really want to try and make Rosado work, you might be able to get away with putting off Paralog maps to let him farm experience on them to let his good growth rates kick in. But it's just not that worth it. He's not unsalvageable. Frankly, I don't think there's a unit in Engage that's truly unsalvageable, but he's pretty close. I'm proud of him for challenging gender norms, I just wish he could actually challenge the enemies as well. And, though that's the last of the Dragon Riders in base Engage, The DLC gives us Celestia, who is designed to be a mixed attacker, getting swords and tomes and having the damage to do something with them. Celestia is amazing, sporting incredibly high damage, great bulk, and flyer utility. She is just really, really good out of the gate. She even gets a neat little personal skill in Soul Blade, which, when she attacks an enemy with a sword, rather than working with their defense, it works with their defense plus resistance divided by 2. It's a little weird, but it actually lets her do really, really good damage. The only thing that it's actually worse for are armored knights, who she would be hitting with the Levin sword, but that's not really that big of a deal, just use a fucking tome. With powerful mixed offenses and just great stats all around, she is truly one of the strongest units in the game. Her only downside is that she's a magic unit without staff utility. So while she's really, really good at fucking killing everything, that's all she can do. But, here's the thing. Killing everything is really, really nice, so honestly, who cares that she can't heal Bosharon? She's just an amazing unit whose only actual downside is that you have to play through the entire DLC every playthrough you want to use her. That can get kind of tedious after the first time, so a lot of players are just going to ignore her because they don't feel like dealing with that. But still, if you feel like dealing with that, you've got a damn good unit. With this video, I've come to learn that the meme about Wyvern Riders being a broken mess is not entirely a joke. Not every single Wyvern Rider is an amazing unit, but damn near every single game has a Wyvern Rider that's an amazing unit. The class is just consistently very, very strong. And it's really not that complicated to see why. High movement, high damage, high bulk. That's really all you need, and Wyvern Riders are chock full of that. I have no doubt in my mind that Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave is going to continue this trend of having absolutely broken Dragon Riders. And honestly, if there was ever a class that was allowed to be consistently broken, I think the one that has a badass on top of a dragon should be allowed to be consistently broken. Because as I said at the very beginning, dragons are badass. Before this video ends, I would like to give a huge shout out to my patrons, whose continued support has been a very big help in keeping this channel going. They like giving me money, I like having money, it's the perfect system. If you would like to join my Patreon, it is patreon.com/FEMSPaint, and the link is in the description below. My patrons include the likes of Across the Night, Adebayo Thompson, Amu is not beating the Tails allegations, Beacon, Bean Juice, Elpis of Hope, Hell on Heelys, Jae Hyun, Jespacito 2, Larmachi, Lysevening Bolt, Morgan Lorgan, Played Arrow, Played is pronounced like the pattern, Sean Vossi, Shen Lu, Viri the Artist, Yagirl Owen, Alex Orliga, Brentendo 11, Drew Hack, Ginger, Gugu Gaga Cornelia Milkers 92, Inverse, Lev Maverick, Maple Knight, Silver Alethea Creations, Sombret, We Love to Sigh. Thank you all for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.